Private Mason ran, his boots clogged with mud and spent brass. He clasps the canister beneath his left arm with enough force to bend the brass. Around him, the cannons start firing. Plasma cannons and standard battle cannons sing a chorus of hatred, and Mason's ears pop in response to the burned atmosphere. His world is smoke and fire and the taste of ash and burned oxygen. His scream is lost in the cacophony of earth-splitting sound as he slips. He lands hard on his back, the swamp-like ground almost enveloping him. He pushes himself up, his face caked with mud. Over his head, thousands of tracers fly over the trench, then thousands more fly back in response. He stands, shakily, and pours the grime from his right eye. Ahead, he sees the steel arm of the man he is looking for. He runs again, sliding through the trench, sliding and running past dozens of his fellow soldiers. He rounds a corner and finds the sergeant he has been looking for. "Sergeant!" Mason screams the rank at the man with the steel arm. "Where is General Rhodes?" The sergeant does not stop looking through his monocular. "I couldn't tell you, son. Go ask Captain Ecker." Mason knows when he's been dismissed. A soldier stood next to the sergeant, points to the trench 200 feet away, and shouts something that Mason cannot hear. Mason launches forward, breathing hard and running harder. He ducks and weaves through Lehman Russ-sized tank traps as rounds ping and whir around him. Mason can see the slipway into the trench and is no more than 15 feet from it when a crude rocket detonates 45 feet to his right. He goes deaf and blind. He comes back to himself and feels his chapped lips, his numb limbs. "The General," he thinks, and forces himself to stand up one more time, his right ear deaf and bleeding. Around him, the world is muted from the explosion, but it isn't the only one. The dark is pushed back by the staccato explosion of orc rocket barrages. Mason begins to move again, heading for the trench, his only safe haven. He drops as he reaches the slipway and slides the 10 feet down into the mire. As he rights himself, from somewhere to his right, Imperial rocket batteries open fire, and the sky is suddenly filled with streaks of burning rocket fuel. He checks the canister under his arm. It is dirty, but it is not broken. A miracle, he chuckles quietly to himself. The rockets hit home over a mile away and bring him back to his reality, and he begins to run again. His left hand touches the wood and steel support beams as he runs harder through the trench. He hears them before he sees them. He hears their muffled, human voices. He comes around a corner and sees a squad of Imperial Guard checking their ammo reserves. "Where is Captain Ecker?" he shouts at the masked soldiers. They reply with blank faces, shrugs, but most simply do not hear him or do not care for his question. He pushes through the crowded soldiers and heads for the slight glow of a chem lamp up ahead. The bunker is a low, dirty thing, a slab of steel used to cover a captain's quarters. Mason manages to squeeze his way between the door and the wall and walks gently down the stairs. In the small, dark room he finds a dishevelled-looking man. His bald head is bloody and scarred from years of war. Mason straightens his uniform as best he can and clears his throat. "Captain Ecker, sir. I have orders from General Lonnick, sir." The bald man doesn't look up and replies in a flat monotone. "I'm not Ecker. Ecker took him round to the gut 3 hours ago. He's in surgery behind the lines. What does the General say?" I'm not aware of what the missive contains. It's not my business. I'm just a runner, sir." The bald man looks Mason up and down, sighs and stands. His fine leather boots are tattered and thick with dried mud. "Well then, you're stuck. And I'm too busy to deal with this. Go and see Rhodes." The bald man sits on the steel folding chair, reaches into his coat and lights a low stick. "He'll know what's best for you to do." The low stick burns with a warm, gentle silence that makes Mason think of the streets of his home. "Go, soldier. You'll find him with the tankers in the southwest, just behind the trenches. Tell him I sent you." Mason pulls his eyes from the low stick and salutes with one hand. "Thank you, sir, and may the God Emperor guide your fight." The bald man looks at Mason with tired, cold eyes. "Sure. Commissar Swan, by the way. That's my name. is all he says. He then points at the staircase and Mason leaves him in the hole. As he begins to squeeze through the doorway, a dozen soldiers run by him, running at full pace, screaming things into their radios, things he doesn't understand. He catches one word, said several times. Killbursters. He does not know what that means. He follows the dozen soldiers. He catches up to them and listens to their conversations. Roger that command. Black Hammer, Mother's Hate and True Sister inbound. Designate coordinates packet 492-XXB. Roger that, sir. Multiple spotted north by northwest, sir. Mason's gut churns. Something is about to happen. Not that that is anything new. Terrible things have been happening for days, maybe even weeks. Negative, General. The ships are engaged in void combat, sir. Drops are out of the question due to high orbit interference from scrap jets. The attack wings are coming in soon to clear the bastards out. Mason runs past them, their radios clicking and buzzing as a reply comes that he does not hear. He does, however, hear the high-pitched buzzing in his bleeding right ear. He hears his breath, ragged and hard-drawn, and the ever-present sound of his boots slamming home into the mud of the trenches. After a minute of running, Mason stops, resting his calloused hand against the steel support beam beside him. He leans at the waist, gasping for breath. He doesn't see it, not initially, but then he notices slowly that he is surrounded by huge brass shells. Confused and oxygen-starved, he looks around and sees above him a hard point that has been broken. The heavy bolter crew lay dead around their weapon. Mason checks them for pulses, knowing he won't find any. He yanks the tags from the first soldier, then a bullet slams into the corpse, sending Mason reeling and sliding back. He hears murmured grunts and what he thinks might be commands. He then hears a single plop beside him. For what feels like an eternity, he looks down at the huge stick bomb, and he thinks to himself, what a crap way to die. Then the adrenaline hits his heart and he grabs the bomb and throws it back over the trench as hard as he can. Mason does not know that that particular bomb was made by a grot who doesn't understand fuse timers. The squad of orc commandos, known to their fellows as the Throat Eaters, have been carefully, quietly sneaking their way towards the line. It was Ed Popper who took out the 3-man heavy bolter squad with careful Gork, or Mork, guided shots. Ed Popper now looks through the sights of his custom shooter, waiting for that little runt to pop his head up and look around. The stick bomb flies gracefully through the air and lands a foot in front of the prone form of Ed Popper. He manages to begin to scream in outrage before the detonation charge triggers and nearly 2 pounds of explosive blossoms like a rose in the no-man's land between the Orc and Imperial lines. Mason hears the thud and is long gone from where he threw the grenade. He is screaming one word, "Orcs! Orcs! Orcs!" In the trenches through which he sprints, dozens of soldiers stand. They run around and take up defensive positions and head to where the heavy bolter squad was. The line lights up as 36 orc commandos and 450 Imperial guardsmen begin a ruthless fight. Their explosions are background pops to Mason, who is running again, forced on by his near-death experience. He hears the reverberating thud of heavy mortar fire and the graceful, almost melodic whistle as mortars the length of his torso fly through the air. They detonate in the air, raining molten shrapnel into the blood gulch in front of the Imperial lines. 2 squads of orc boys roar their way through the wrecks and the ruin towards the firefight. As they run, they are shot down by the guard, but soon they will close the gap and be in the trenches. Again. The trench is quiet this far back. It's quiet and dark. The quiet seems to be a living thing that enshrouds him. He imagines it painting him, covering him and consuming him. Then the battle cannon no more than 50 feet in front of him fires. The cannon bucks and births a sun that burns the silence and the dark. Mason shouts, deafened as the rounds fly over his trench. He does not hear it connect with the looted Lehman Russ. He does not hear the orcs inside the tank die in the explosion. He clasps his hand to his ears and the brass canister falls to the floor. He swears, roaring as he does so, and leans to pick the canister up. Find the general is all he can think. So he staggers forward, clambering up the trench wall, hand over hand. The tanks are expertly concealed in the stunted tree line. Multi-layered camo netting conceals the armour. Mason walks, exhausted, towards the tank that fired. Its huge camouflaged hull is scored, burned black and silver, gouged deep by rounds that didn't penetrate the hull. Mason places his hand on the side of the tank to steady himself when he sees a figure above him. He sees a glowing red eye staring down at him from atop the tank. The figure is human, but Mason is concussion dumb. A hatch opens on the side of the tank and a man climbs out. The small, wiry man's black skin is lined with livid, ragged scars. He is speaking, but Mason only hears a muted, burring sound. He reaches inside the tank and takes out a small steel cup and holds it to Mason, making a drinking gesture with his other hand. Mason comprehends and takes the cup. He sniffs at it. It smells like promethium and shine that his uncle used to make. The man is talking again, but Mason doesn't hear him. He drinks the measure of clear liquid. It burns his way down into his gut, and he suddenly becomes aware of the fact that he is somehow alive. Mason recoils and staggers around, burning and numb. The red-eyed figure climbs down from the tank and holds a piece of scroll up to Mason. Mason takes a few moments to regain composure, the two tankers waiting patiently. This young guy isn't the first shell-deafened soldier they've seen, and he won't be the last. Mason looks around and reads the scroll. Hold your nose, close your mouth, and breathe out through your nose. The red-eyed man nods slowly at Mason, encouraging him. Mason does so, and the pain is staggering. He feels lines and bubbles of raw molten iron sear through his ears and sinuses. Then his left ear pops, and he can hear again, just about. The tanker looks him up and down and laughs as he asks Mason a single question. "What in the throne are you doing back here? Ain't there enough fighting up front, soldier boy?" Yes, sir, there is, sir, but I've been ordered to find General Rhodes by Captain Ecker. I have a missive from Imperial Command, sir. The tankers look at each other, eyebrows raised. The crewman presses a bead at his jaw and murmurs something that Mason cannot hear. The red-eyed man steps to Mason and looks him up and down. He is disheartened by the scrawny, underfed soldier before him, but he is impressed by the tenacity of this kid. The red-eyed man is about to speak when a voice echoes around the three men. At the sound of the voice, the remaining tank crew scrabble from the tank and stand to attention. Mason is confused. He heard something, but doesn't understand. He turns, slightly dazed, and looks into the face of a man who is 115 years old. The man's throat is a vented steel box. His great coat is ragged and shredded, and his augmented arms and legs are visible beneath the ragged cloth. "You called for me, soldier." Mason looks at the man's deep, green, steel eyes and thinks, "Speak to him, you frackin' moron." "Sir, are you General Rhodes, sir?" "Indeed I am, but don't call me General. Just Rhodes will do. What can I do for you, son?" Mason straightens up, his back aching, his legs aching even more. "Sir, I have a missive from Imperial Command for you, sir." Mason looks down as he holds out the brass cylinder. He is shaking like a street urchin. The brass cylinder bobs up and down in his grasp. "Why, thank you, soldier." With black iron fingers, Rhodes takes the brass tube and opens it with far more grace than Mason imagined him capable of. His augmetic eyes scan over the small piece of vellum. His face twitches, his reaction obvious as he reads. Rhodes lowers the paper and considers it for a moment. He then hands it to the red-eyed man, who also reads it. "Looks like we're back on the stage, Captain." "Damn right, we've been taking out nothing but looted Russes for days." "You may end up wishing you were back here, doing that very soon, Captain." Rhodes takes a small device from inside of his jacket and burns a mark onto the paper that Mason gave him. He then places it back in the tube and gives it to Mason once more. Go and give that to Rear Line Artillery Captain Amelia Ash. Understand? Mason nods his affirmation. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Keep going west. You'll see and hear her formation. They're yet to stop firing. Incoming! The yell shatters the moment's peace, and Rhodes looks up suddenly. He is roaring commands into his vox as he runs back to where he came from. He turns his green eyes to Mason and winks once before Mason starts to run again. The Lehman Russ that deafened Mason is rocked by the raw force of a shell detonating 10 feet in front of it. The rain of dirt and deep-buried roots peppers Mason from above as he runs deeper into the camouflaged position. Mason does not know when he lost his vox speed. If he had it, he would hear Rhodes order his tank forward. The huge engines roar behind him, and he knows that a Baneblade has broken its cover and was about to do some terrible work. The forward-mounted lights flick on, like the eyes of some great slumbering beast. The huge plasma cannon begins to burn as it rotates towards the enemy lines. Mason runs harder than he ever has in his entire life, not wanting to be literally cooked from the outside in by the vast energy of the plasma cannon's shot. He clears 100 feet before the heat washes over him. The skin on his neck is burned red by the exposure as the Baneblade, Badhammer, fires. Mason looks over his shoulder and sees a small ball of raw sunlight fly half a mile. In the light cast by that shot, he thinks he sees hundreds of figures and dozens of hulking machines. The sun hits a death dread, and the Orc Lion implodes. Mason is now out of sight of the tanks, but not the noise. Hell is being birthed behind him as armour columns move forward. To the southwest, he sees the flashes and fading of orange light, and the sound of the ground shaking comes to him. It's a gentle 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 shaking, ordered and controlled. Then the hydras light up the sky with lines of raw hate. Mason sees, far above him, 250 scrapjets. The planes are being torn apart as they move, reduced to wreckage mid-flight, but a lot still make it. Around him, their burner bombs explode without ceremony. Fire and shrapnel lash the area, and a shard of metal glances his right arm. He drops the canister, swears again, and grabs it once more. He runs on, breathing in through his nose and out through his mouth. In the trenches across the whole continent, 1,000 versions of Mason run through blood and dirt to send messages. The young man slips and slides, but never lets the canister from under his arm. He darts past Hydra anti-air positions that are 35 tanks wide and 5 rows deep. Their cannons send massive flak rounds into the already black sky. Their conductor, the legendary General Vincent von Helfrich, stands in his customary position at the very front of his armoured unit, his arms spread out wide, screaming at the tanks to do his work. He flicks a single glance to Mason, who sees the man's insane red and black eyes. The general laughs and shouts something to Mason, but the words are lost to the continuous fire of the hydras. A mile later, Mason realises that the lights to the right of the trenches are brighter. He sees a hive of activity, soldiers and tankers hauling shells, opening boxes and unloading haulers. Finally, the mud abates as Mason slows to a walk and shouts for General Amelia Ash. The dull-eyed soldiers look at him and look away, too busy or tired or both to pay him any mind. A woman, tall and lithe, watches Mason walk towards her, still shouting her name. Mason trudges slowly to her, bleeding from a dozen places and numb from the damp. This is for you, General, from Imperial Command. If it pleases. The woman grimaces and looks him up and down.
I suppose it does.
He watches her open the canister. She scans the note, her face unchanging, and then drops the brass tube into the mud without ceremony. Ma'am?
What?
she replies as he points to the canister. Nothing, pardon the interruption. She reads and then drops the note on the floor as well.
They couldn't send us via the Vox?
I don't know, ma'am.
Or do they just enjoy getting messengers killed?
Mason watches the note slowly sink in the mud and water and stares dumbfounded. She shouts orders to her men, and the huge cannons of the Armageddon 156th battery readjusts their targeting by 5 degrees. Ash lets out a short, bitter laugh.
5 degrees? They sent you through that hell.
She gestures over the 4-mile-deep killing field of smoke, fire and corpses.
For 5 thrown damned degrees?
Then the entire position erupts. Guns, men, General Ash, even the note and the canister disappear in a cloud of fire and smoke and mud. And thousands of messengers, like Mason, run through the never-ending hell that is the front line of Armageddon. They run and slip and stand and fall. And their messages pass from general to sergeant. Millions fight. More fall. Men die over a foot of blasted dead land. And they do not know why they fight. Only that they must.